Do I get Botox and fillers as a dermatologist? Of course I do. So today I'm going to walk you through exactly what I do and where when I inject my face. If you're new here, welcome. Otherwise, welcome back. I'm Dr. Sam Ellis. I'm a board-certified medical and cosmetic dermatologist in Northern California, and I'm really here to help you understand your skin and find products and sometimes procedures that work for you. So if that sounds good, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've decided to film this video in my bathroom right in front of my mirror because we're going to get really close up and in on the details. About, like 3 years ago now, I shot another video for my channel about all the cosmetic things I have ever had done, and I totally encourage you to look at that as well because that also talks about lasers and other things that I'm not going over today. But since then, how I inject my face and what I do and what I've had done has changed a little bit. It's 3 years later, I've had a baby, and just my own aesthetic and what I like in my features has shifted a little bit. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to be sharing some tips about how to find a good cosmetic injector, so make sure you stick around for that because that is so important. Now, before I jump into the specific injections that I've had done and what I continue to do as part of my beauty maintenance, if you will, I will admit, I'm a little nervous to share this as I was a few years ago. I feel like when you are specifically saying here's my face and here are the things I've done to it, it leaves a wide door open for people to be quite judgmental and frankly mean. But I also realized that this video is not for those people. I'm also not trying to convince you to have cosmetic procedures done. That is such a personal choice, and by no means do we need cosmetics in our lives, but I find that the way you make the best decisions for yourself is to be informed. So I'm sharing my experience in hopes that it helps guide your experience. This is for people who want to learn and also maybe for people who are just nosy and want to know what I've had done to my face. I'm going to start by talking about Botox and everywhere that I use Botox in my face. I shared kind of a shorter version of this on my TikTok and I got so many questions about the details, how many units, exactly where I put it. And so I feel like this will give you all of that. As a reminder, Botox is an injectable that's used to decrease muscle movement intensity. So a lot of us will form wrinkles or creases in our face over the years by repeatedly doing certain motions, whether that's raising our eyebrows, giving us horizontal forehead creases, or scowling, which can create these little 11 lines between the brows. Those repeated things add up over time, and Botox can be used to relax the muscles so that you are not doing that. Now, in the lower face and in the neck, and I'll get to how I inject those areas on me in a second, Botox is less so used to prevent wrinkles and more so used to augment the shape of the jawline, to change the way the chin and the lips move to be more aesthetically pleasing or perhaps even more balanced. There are a lot of undesired age-related changes that occur around the mouth. That can be like the downturning corners of the mouth, pebbling up of the chin, or balling up of the chin. You can use Botox preventatively in the lower face so that that doesn't happen or that process is significantly slowed down. Also, just for simplicity's sake throughout this video, I'm going to be using the term Botox to refer to any of the various neuromodulators that can be injected into the face. So you might have heard of other brands like Dysport, Daxxify, Jeuveau, Xeomin. They are Botox rivals that are made by different pharmaceutical companies, but they all do the same thing once they're injected. If you're interested in knowing the nitty-gritty details of the differences, I have a Botox Q&A YouTube video that goes into that. I stock all the different neuromodulators in my clinic because sometimes patients have their own personal preferences. I don't have any preference. I've injected all of the different neuromodulators into my face, and by and large, I cannot tell the difference. The only thing I'll say is that Daxxify and Dysport both kick in faster for me than Botox. So if I was kind of behind on my injection schedule and I'm leaving on vacation in a few days and I really need it to be kicked in, I might reach for something like Dysport, but in general, I kind of just use whatever I have. Now, I first started getting Botox when I was 26, and did I need it for anti-aging then? Absolutely not. And could I have gone 10 more years without getting it? Sure. I'm 35 now. So comparison, I've been getting it for almost a decade, but I was using it then for beautification. So not for anti-aging, but to give my brow a little bit more of an arch, to open up my eyes a little bit. I naturally have small, deep set eyes that can look quite dark and brooding and more in a I'm mad way, not in a sexy way. And so I was really using it to bring some softness to my upper face. And at that point, I was also using it in my masseter muscles here to slim my jaw a little bit because I have quite a square face. Now, if someone's main intent with their Botox is to really just prevent aging and not really do any other aesthetic adjustments, then you really don't need it until you're kind of starting to see lines at rest, meaning that when you are not elevating your eyebrows, you start to see the crease there, or you start to notice your makeup is settling into that line. That's a good point to think about getting Botox if you're interested in it, because when the line is just barely etched in, you can actually start getting Botox, and over time, by stopping that muscle movement, that line can correct itself and completely smooth back out again. All right, without further ado, let's just start showing you where I inject my own face. I have grabbed an eyeliner here to do some markings. At this point in my life, I do Botox both for anti-aging and for beautification or facial balancing. When I was pregnant, I didn't have Botox for almost a year, and I could really see the difference in what my face looked like when I had Botox and when I didn't, and I preferred my face when I had Botox in it. I last injected my upper face about 3 months ago, and Botox typically is fully worn off at the 4-month mark for me. So you'll see I have like a decent amount of movement at this point in time. So to give myself a brow lift and to really kind of prevent these lines from forming between my brows, I inject. It's hard if my muscles aren't really moving because usually I'm looking exactly like where the muscles move to know where to inject. That's the other thing. This map is for me and my face. When I'm injecting my patients, I am looking at how their specific face moves. It is so personalized to the patient. But anyway, the muscles I've just marked are called your corrugators, and they naturally pull your brows down and in. So when you inject Botox there and you relax them, the brows are able to kind of float up and out and give you kind of a more open appearance. And then the one in the middle is called the procerus muscle, and that pulls your brows like straight down. So it's really important to inject here. Some people have a very bulky procerus muscle that makes them look almost Neanderthal-like. And so when you inject that muscle with Botox, it can actually decrease the bulk of that muscle and give someone a much more feminine appearance to their upper face. So if someone wants that, that can be a really nice benefit of Botox as well in that location. And in this entire complex for myself, I usually use somewhere between 18 and 20 units. I don't even do the same thing in my own face every single time. I'm always looking at how my face is moving at that moment on that day to ensure that what I'm doing is really matching and meeting me where I'm at, and I'm not just being formulaic about it, which is where you get into trouble. I'll also inject my forehead here to help prevent those horizontal forehead lines that happen from repeated eyebrow raising. Now, I tend to use a lighter dose up here because I still like to maintain some muscle movement, and also these muscles naturally pull my brows up. So if I do too high of a dose here, it's going to push my brows down, which is not my desired look. In my forehead, I generally use around 8 to 9 units. A unit is kind of an arbitrary measurement, but it's how Botox is measured. And every unit decreases muscle movement a certain amount. So if you have a really strong muscle, you need more units to decrease its activity. If you have quite a weak muscle, you can get away with using very few units to deactivate it or lessen its activity. For my forehead, I always just like look at how I'm moving. So I always get a little crease over this brow, so I always want to calm that down, but I just use about a half unit right here, really small amount, because I don't want to make this too low, but I also don't want to have that crease right there. And then I usually just go kind of across the top. I keep my injections quite high in the forehead because I do not, again, want to slam my brow down. My brow down. I don't have as many wrinkles on this side, so I actually don't usually do a little dot above that brow. So you can see I don't inject myself symmetrically because I'm not symmetrical. Moving down the face, kind of the next area we would think about is the crow's feet. So I don't do my crow's feet very often. For me, and because I have such big cheeks and high cheekbones, if I do my crow's feet to relax all of those little wrinkles right there, I find that it can make my cheeks almost look shelf-like because nothing's moving and then it's like doink cheeks, and it just doesn't look like me. Plus, I don't have tons of lines there yet, so why would I inject something if I literally have 0 lines? But I do like to do a little injection under the tail of my brow on each side to give myself a brow lift. So naturally, these fibers bring the tail of the brow down and in. So when you relax that with Botox, it allows the brow to float up a bit. So I'm kind of treating like my upper crow's foot there, but I don't mind my crow's feet at this stage in my life, so I don't inject them. And when I do this brow lift, I do about 2 units there and 2 units there. So this whole upper face for me is usually around 30 to 35 units. If I was going to do someone's full crow's feet there, that can add another 12 to 30 units depending on how strong they are. And again, how many units you need is so dependent on you and your goals and your muscle strength. Now let's move on to my lower face, which I just injected a week ago. So it's actually still kicking in. So we'll see how this goes. And like I mentioned before, I'm not using Botox in my lower face to help with wrinkles. I'm really using it to help with how certain muscles move. I'm using it to debulk my masseter muscles, which I'll talk about in a second. But a lot of what I'm doing in my lower face is both preventative, and also because I'm on camera and I'm talking a lot, I use it to bring more symmetry to my lower face, because there's a lot of stuff I see when I'm looking back at video that I've done where I'm like, oh, I think I want to tweak that. Okay, first up, I sneer on this side when I smile. So the Botox is like half kicked in right now, so you might not fully see it, but when I smile, this side, the lip comes up, and on this side it doesn't. And you might be watching this being like, is this person insane to care about something so small? It's me, it's my life, whatever. If that wouldn't bother you, then fine. But I'm on camera a lot and I want to make that a little bit better. So I put a drop of Botox actually right here at the base of my nose, because that will drop that down a little to give a little bit more symmetry. That's like 1.5 units. I also inject 4 units along my upper lip. So here, 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 and here, to help with lip lines. So when I do that, you can get those little like wrinkles or upper lip lines. I don't have them yet, but my mom has them and hates them. And I do this. This is totally preventative for me to prevent those lines from ever getting etched in. I really err on a light dose here because this is a functional muscle. If you overtreat this, it can be hard to drink out of a straw, to whistle, to just talk and look normal when you're talking. And so I do just like a whisper of Botox there. Injecting there also gives me a lip flip. When I used to smile, my lip would curl inward and I would smile and my lip would do this. And I would totally lose my upper lip and didn't love it. So now when I smile, the lip stays turned out because that muscle is relaxed. It's not pushing the lip muscle in and around. So injections here can help with lip lines, but they can also help with a lip flip to give the appearance of a fuller upper lip if you're someone whose lip naturally turns in when you smile. All right, the next thing I'm going to show you is going to be a great example because it's only kicked in on one side. So I inject something called my depressor anguli oris to help keep the corners of my mouth up. We naturally have a muscle here that inserts and pulls the corners of our mouth down. And so by injecting that, you just are reducing that chronic downward pulling at the corners of the mouth. So if I try to frown, can you tell which side it's kicked in on? Can't frown on this side, can frown on this side. So where I injected was here and here. Now, the reason it's probably kicked in on this side is I also do an added injection down here into my depressor labii inferioris, which normally does this to your lip, like pulls it like down this way, not the corners of your mouth, but the lip itself, because I have an injury to this side of my lip where it doesn't naturally pull down. And so I overcompensate on this side. So I inject, whoa, lost the tip of my pencil, but I inject down here so that I just have a little bit more symmetry in my face. I've just marked the last 2 areas that I do in my midline lower face, and that's into the mentalis or the chin muscle. It's a 2-pronged muscle. It's kind of forked. That's why in some people, they'll have like a little dimple chin or a little butt chin. But I do injections here to help with cottage cheese chin or dimpling of the chin, pot orange, orange peel chin. It has so many names. But basically, if I really ball up my chin hard, you can see all those little lines. Now, that's not really a problem. I don't make that face on a day-to-day basis, but I also tend to see that dimpling when I do a really big smile. And so I'm injecting here to kind of prevent that. The DAOs get 3 units on each side. The DLI here is just 1 little unit. And then I usually do between 4 and 6 units in my chin, depending on how much it's moving the day I'm injecting. As I mentioned earlier, I do Botox into my masseter muscles, but I only do this about once a year. In the past, I have injected them twice a year, but I felt like my face was getting overly slim. And if you actually look back at some of my old YouTube videos, including the one where I talked about where I inject my face, you'll see my jawline is so much slimmer there. And I don't like it quite that slim, but this is also quite bulky. So when my jaw is the same width as my cheekbones, I like to inject at that point, which happens to be about once a year. And I inject kind of here, here, here. Kind of, it's like it's a triangle. It's very hard to do this looking in the mirror. Here, here, here. You have to be so careful that you don't inject other parts of the masseter that are too anterior or too close to the front of the face because it can change your smile. It can make you look really weird. So it's so important that this is done correctly so that it looks normal and not bizarre. The tip of this is running out. I need a sharpener, but I just marked along my jawline here and down something called my platysmal bands. So this is the last place that I inject in my whole head and neck area. And we all have this platysma muscle, which is a sheet-like muscle that kind of wraps over our neck and grabs onto our lower face and is constantly pulling down on it. So when you inject Botox along your jawline and along these vertical bands of the platysma, it allows the platysma muscle to relax away from the jawline and give you some more definition in that area. In my masseter muscles, I put 15 per side, so 30 units total. That really ranges for my patients. I usually start at 15 per side, but I can go up to 27 units per side, depending on how bulky their muscle is. And then along my jawline and the platysma combined is usually somewhere between 26 and 34 units. So when I'm looking to inject my entire face and neck area, I'm looking at like 100 to 120 units. And I know that sounds like a lot, but sometimes using more Botox in more locations actually makes someone look more balanced. A lot of times people are just getting Botox in one area and then they start to recruit muscles in other parts of their face and it begins to look off or done. And the whole goal with aesthetics is to achieve more facial balance. So it's really important that you're thinking about, if I inject this muscle, what's going to happen to this muscle and how will the rest of my face respond? And finding an injector who can bring more harmony to your face and give you recommendations and inject expertly to help you achieve that is the most important thing. Now, I know this looks ridiculous with me all marked up like this, but I'm about to look more ridiculous because I'm also going to show you where I put my fillers. I actually don't have a ton of filler in my face, so this part of the video will be a little bit faster. When I'm thinking about using filler in someone, I'm either using it to beautify them, so to give them a feature that they never had, whether that's like more chin projection, a fuller lip that's more balanced with their face, or I'm using it to anti-age them by giving them support back in their face or restoring a feature that has changed over time. I also think filler needs to be used so judiciously so that someone continues to look normal and like themselves. I think the biggest mistake I see people make with fillers is overfilling because they are trying to compensate for all aspects of aging by exclusively using filler when they really need other things, whether that's Botox, lasers, surgery, to be getting the anti-aging results that they're actually seeking. All right, so where do I have filler? I have it in my lips. I started doing this when I was 28 or 29. I had a very small upper lip and I've always had big full cheeks. These are my natural cheeks. I've never put a lick of filler in there. It's just how they are. But in comparison, I felt like my mouth was this like little mouth at the bottom with these big teeth, my chiclet teeth. And so I just felt like adding a little bit more lip fullness there would bring more balance to my face. And you've heard this word balance come up over and over and over again throughout this video because harmony among your features is what is so important. Yes, you can look at someone's mouth or their cheeks or their chin and be like, oh, that's nice. But unless they are in balance with one another, you're not going to look good. And with my lip filler, I've always tried to really follow the natural shape of my lip. I think people get into trouble with their lip filler looking really bizarre when they're trying to give themselves a lip shape that they don't naturally have. So I've worked with my own anatomy here. I have it like through here, all through here. So mostly working in the center of my lower lip. And again, you want to have more fullness in the center of your lips and it kind of taper outward. So many times people will come in and they'll be like, I want a lot of fullness like out here. But if you actually do that, it looks very sausagey and just not natural. So same in the upper lips, it's mostly all through this area and this area and just tapers. Anytime I've done my lips, I have never put more than a quarter of a syringe in at a time. Because I had small lips to begin with, they could not accommodate a lot of filler. And I think that's another place people get into trouble is they try to put too much product in at once. So I've slowly built these lips over time. The last time I've injected my lips now is over a year ago because that volume has just sustained itself. And in terms of the product I have used the most in my lips, it's been Restylane Refine. That is just a very thin, kind of malleable filler, so you want it to move with you, but it's so much less about the product and so much more about who's injecting it. So even though I like Restylane Refine a lot in my lips, I use a wide variety of fillers in my patients' lips depending on their unique anatomy and what their goals are. The other two places I have hyaluronic acid-based fillers, which are different than biostimulatory fillers, which I'm about to talk about. Hyaluronic acid fillers are gel-like substances, so as soon as you put them in the skin, you get that immediate plumping effect because they take up space in the tissue. So the other place I have hyaluronic acid-based fillers are right here in my nasolabial folds, but like very superficially placed. I am not doing it to add a lot of volume there. I don't have a lot of volume lost there, so you don't want to replace volume where you haven't lost it, but I have a little superficial line that's just kind of etching in over time, so I place it very, very superficially. Actually, I go in this direction and I kind of do these little threads like this, and I just support. Wow, this is a real look. I support that so that when I smile, which, you know, I'm not going to not smile, these lines don't just create these deep, deep creases over time. They'll still form. I'm not trying to not age here. I'm just trying to like soften the blow a little bit. And I do that same technique along what's called my mental crease. So where my chin mentalis muscle meets the skin part of my lower lip. Right there. Just so again, that doesn't form a deep crease. If you're watching this video and you're like, oh, I never thought about that. When it comes to cosmetics, there are so many little parts of the face that show signs of aging. And when they interplay, that's when you get the overall impression of being able to look at someone and be like, yeah, I can guess that that person's in their 50s or 60s or whatever. And so it's about addressing all these like tiny little things, for me at least, so that everything is kind of on the same page. And I do these injections here maybe once every couple of years, maybe like every 18 months or so, but it's just such a small amount of product and you just don't need to re-up it that often. I feel like you hear, oh, fillers last a year or they last 9 months. And like, yeah, that's how they were studied. But more and more data has come to light that fillers actually last much, much longer in the tissues. And some people come in and they think that's a bad thing. They're like, oh my God, fillers last forever. Like that's a problem. To me, like that's great. You're going to get a lot more longevity out of your injections as long as you have an injector who can recognize that your filler is still there and not overfill you. I'm honestly finding it hard to give you guys advice looking the way this looks, but I'm just going to make it worse now because I'm going to show you where I use Sculptra in my face, which is a collagen stimulating injectable. Now I have an entire video on Sculptra if you want all of the details, but it is essentially what we call a biostimulatory filler. So when you inject Sculptra particles into the skin, they stimulate collagen in the areas that they're injected. And collagen is the main structural support protein in your skin. So where you inject Sculptra, the skin actually thickens up a little bit and you can get a little bit more natural looking fullness. When people age, they tend to fall more into one of two categories. They are either a sagger, where everything starts to fall down, they get really big eye bags, their jowls start to show, or they are a sinker like me, where everything starts to like hollow out and sink in and they start to look a bit like a skeleton. Sculptra is a great injectable for people who are sinkers because you can kind of use it throughout the face to just add a little bit of volume without making it look like the patient is puffy. So for me, I have had Sculptra in my temples because that's an area that gets quite hollow in people as they get older. And you can see I don't have like a huge filled out temple now. I'm not trying to look like a light bulb head either. I don't want to add too much volume because I feel like that becomes detectable. I'm just trying to restore a little bit. So Sculptra here, do this every year. And I also have a little bit of Sculptra just like right through this area here. So I noticed when I had my son and was breastfeeding, I actually lost weight breastfeeding quite quickly and I got really gaunt here. And I naturally don't have any buccal fat. Like if you look at both my mom and my dad, strong jawline, high cheekbones, no fat here. And so I'm actually kind of using Sculptra in these areas so that I don't get too hollow. And it's not going to be perfect. And I'm not trying to look perfect. I'm just trying to restore volume in areas that I tend to lose it so that I look more just like myself and more refreshed. So that's all the injections I get done and continue to do. I wanted to be transparent about this, not because I feel like I owe it to anyone, but because I always appreciate when I can better understand how someone does what they do. And I always find it quite interesting and I really appreciate it. So hopefully you learned something from this. And if you're thinking about having injectables done or you've had them done in the past and you haven't been super happy, my best advice for getting good injections is to go based on the recommendation of a friend or family member who you have seen the results in. I truly feel like you can only glean so much information from an online review or a photo, even on someone's website or Instagram or TikTok, because a photo is not real life. There are also like retouching tools that exist now and are widely and inappropriately used. But if you're looking at your friend or family member and you're like, oh yeah, her lips look great, or like her skin is glowing, or she just looks good and I can't even tell exactly why, that to me is the most glowing of recommendation you could receive. You're always going to be able to look online to see that person's credentials. Are they a physician? Are they boarded in an aesthetic specialty like plastics or dermatology or ENT? ophthalmology sometimes, if that's something that's important to you. I'm not saying that PAs and nurses can't be really skilled injectors also, but some people only want a physician injecting them. And in that case, online is where you're going to find that information. But I think more important than anything is the vibe you get when you meet with that person for a consultation. How are they looking at your face? What is the conversation like? You do not want a yes person where you're like, I want lips, I want cheeks, I want tear trough filler. And they're like, sure, yeah. Like they need to be looking carefully at your face. And honestly, you kind of want an injector who's going to tell you no, because it's their expertise. Even though you're very familiar with your face, they understand how to get the results that you want. And it's honestly not that uncommon to try a few injectors in your lifetime. People don't always nail it the first time they go to somebody, or they might need a couple of consultations with other people to kind of see how things go. And as much as a patient is coming in for a consultation with me to see if I'm going to be a good injector for them, I'm also kind of thinking, is this going to be a good patient for me? Do their goals align with my goals for them? Is what they envision their face looking like how I envision their face looking? And making sure that you have the same aesthetic vision is also super important, because if one person is thinking, oh, I'm going to make this person look really natural, and they're hoping to have super lips, really emphasize features, things like that, like you're not going to meet at a place where you're both happy with the work. Whew, I can honestly talk about injectables and my philosophies and techniques around them for hours. So if you still have questions about cosmetics or injectables, definitely put it in the comments. I want to know what you want to know. Also, if you've ever had cosmetic injections done, please share your experience in the comments. I find it so interesting, and I know other people who watch this channel, who are part of this YouTube community, find that incredibly helpful as well. Thank you so much for being here. You do not know how much it means to me. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.